Hey, it's zero point 0.5 Step 2 video, Unforgettable Openings and Provocative Endings. Our learning objective for this lesson is students will be able to write a first draft of the college application essay and share it with a classmate. So let's talk openings and endings. We're really looking at criteria 2 about thoughtful structure, and that's where we get this phrase unforgettable opening and provocative ending. Okay, so you want to try to get there to get that high grade for your essay. How do we do it? Let's take a look. One, the openings and endings need to be unforgettable and provocative. This is a great way to stand out from the crowd, and it's all about criteria 2. All right, so one technique that publishers use, especially publishers of thrillers, is the airport test. And they say, okay, imagine you are about to take a 5-hour flight and you don't have access to movies, you got to read a book. So you're flipping through books, and would this first line, would this opening be enough to get you to want to buy this book for that flight? That's what the airport test is. What makes a good opening line? And also I have a quote here from Ursula K. Le Guin, who said first sentences are doors to worlds in her essay, The Fisherwoman's Daughter. An opening line casts an immediate spell. It grabs the attention like a starter's gun. It sets the tone and opens us to a new world. Check out some of these opening lines. Here is from Zora Neale Hurston's Their Eyes Were Watching God. Ships at a distance have every man's wish on board. How about The Color Purple's opening by Alice Walker? You better not never tell nobody but God. It'd kill your mammy. Very different than Hurston's opening line that has this, sort of aphorism, maxim idea, but that's original, that every man's wish is on board a ship at a distance. When we're looking at a ship that's far away, our hopes are there. She makes a distinction that this is for men and women aren't that way in her book, but it might be everyone is that way. I don't know. This one, though, is very different, right? These are words spoken by an abusive father to his daughter. Celie, the main character of Alice Walker's The Color Purple, and probably one of the most sinister and haunting lines of fiction. It's gripping, impossible to forget. How about this one? Very different, from George Orwell's 1984. It was a bright, cold day in April, and the clocks were striking 13. In Orwell's dystopian future, nothing is certain, nothing is fixed. Even time itself can be manipulated when the government has toppled God, a haunting message that sets an eerie tone for one of the greatest novels in the 20th century. I like this one from Sylvia Plath's The Bell Jar. It was a queer, sultry summer, the summer they electrocuted the Rosenbergs, and I didn't know what I was doing in New York. That one puts you right in the middle of things. The narrator has already moved to New York and doesn't know what she's doing there. Something has already happened. We are in the midst of things. And that brings us to the next topic, which is in medias res. It's Latin for in the midst of things. And it is a type of opening that begins in the middle of action. So here's an example from Mrs. Dalloway by Virginia Woolf. Mrs. Dalloway said she would buy the flowers herself. Well, what are the flowers to be bought for? And who is this Mrs. Dalloway? So we're right in the middle of the action. Other things have already happened that haven't been introduced to us, and we start on the ground running. Here's another example. There was no possibility of taking a walk that day, from Jane Eyre by Charlotte Bronte. Who wanted to take a walk? What day was it? And why was there no possibility? We're in the middle of something already. So in medias res is a great way to start your college application essay. You might want to try it. What to avoid? Well, you don't want this college application essay to sound like an essay. I know I'm calling it an essay. In actuality, it's much more a story than anything else. And so you want it to not sound like the beginning of a 5-paragraph essay. You were taught many moons ago to start a 5-paragraph essay with a hook, right? An attention getter that grabs the reader's attention no matter who they are and what they know about the topic at hand. And some good ways to start a 5-paragraph essay are with a quote, a startling statement, a rhetorical question, and there are others, anecdote. I don't know what all you like to do in your expository essays, but for this assignment, you want to avoid those traditional 5-paragraph essay hooks. And you don't want to say, in this essay I will discuss. Pretend it's a story. Show, don't tell. Start in the middle of things. Let it be a story that shows the real you or an aspect of the real you to your reader, instead of it being an expository essay. Okay, it might be tough to do, right? We haven't done a whole lot of this. And that's why we're going to do some drafting and some peer reviewing and some revising. Repetition and variance is a great technique to use for endings. So we just talked about openings. Now let's talk a little bit about endings. It is just repeating something from the opening, but changing it slightly to enhance your point. So you're going to return to an element of the beginning, but change it up slightly. Maybe it's an image that you used in the opening, a particular phrase, an event, anecdote, some kind of action that took place, some dialogue, something like that. But whatever you do, you're going to change it just slightly. It works well to tie up loose ends and to give the piece a sense of unity and wholeness. So repeat and vary to make your point. Here's an example from the student sample Naive Enough to Learn that some of you read. He starts off in his opening with, I was 16 years old when I saved my first life, and he describes a young child jumping into the water off the diving board who couldn't swim. He still had the exact same look of confidence on his face after he saved him from the water, one that I now knew was actually that of a naive kid. He didn't say a word to me. He just hopped out of the pool and walked away to go swim somewhere else. Now here's his ending. Sometimes I think back to how I mistook that boy's naivete for confidence, and I've come to realize that those two words are one and the same. The only difference is that a naive person has yet to learn how things work. Just like those kids at the pool, I am ready to come back after each failure to learn what went wrong and how to fix it. So in my mind, a naive person is someone who has a lot to learn and by nature will not give up until they understand. And I am a very naive person. And so this student first talks about naivete in a negative way, right? But then later sees it as a positive way. So that is the variety, the change in the repeating of that word and that idea. Here's another one from Forgiving My Father. Here is the student's beginning. In 5 minutes, the meaning of the word family completely changed. In 4 minutes, my legs buckled underneath me. In 3 minutes, my parents' screams pierced the walls. In 2 minutes, my brothers and I held each other, trying desperately to block out the outside world. And in that final minute, my entire childhood was stripped away and I was left a man in a boy's body. 7 years ago, I witnessed the reduction of my parents' marriage and my father's flight as he abandoned my family. And then he ends with, my story is still in its beginning chapters, and it starts here with these words on this paper, and where it will end is with me, after years of hard work, finally doing what my father's absence inspired me to do, to help others. Maybe then I can put to rest those 5 minutes of pain and the successive memories and live the rest of my, sorry, it's crossed off, many millions of minutes unafraid. And so that, just that phrase, 5 minutes, is repeated at the end and changed. Other tips for the ending. If you can find a title in your last paragraph, then you know you have a thought-provoking ending. If you feel like questions have been answered, and if you feel like it's thought-provoking, that's the provocative piece, enough that it might leave the reader thinking about it afterwards, then you also know that you've got a good ending. All right, good luck as you start working on your rough draft.